Good afternoon. I'm Levon Esters, Vice Provost for Graduate Education and Dean of the J. Jeffrey and Amory Fox Graduate School. It's a pleasure to welcome you to Charting Your Career Path Through Uncertainty, hosted by the Fox Graduate School and the Fox Graduate School Alumni Society. Whether you're joining us here in the Flex Theater or tuning in online, thank you for being a part of this important conversation. At the Fox Graduate School, our mission is to prepare interdisciplinary leaders who advance knowledge, drive innovation, and address complex global challenges. One of our core strategic priorities is enhancing graduate student success, not just academically, but professionally and personally. Today's panel is a direct reflection of that commitment. We know that navigating the job market after graduate school can feel uncertain, especially in a rapidly changing world. That's how we brought together a group of outstanding Penn State alumni whose careers span industry, government, and academia. Their collective expertise covers everything from artificial intelligence and global supply chains to user experience, research, and advanced engineering. These are professionals who have not only adapted to change, but they've thrived in it as well. Their insights will be valuable to graduate students from all disciplines, whether you're in the sciences, humanities, engineering, or the arts. The strategies they'll share today can help you build resilience, stay adaptable, and pursue opportunities that align with your values and goals. So let me introduce our panelists for this afternoon. We have Matt Chang, programmer at Google DeepMind, Penn State electrical engineering alumnus and Princeton PhD. We also have Jamie Rogers, global strategic sourcing manager at Amazon, Penn State Spanish alumnus and MBA graduate from George Washington University. We also have Mina Tsai Vogel, UX Research Manager at Meta, and Penn State PhD in Mass Communications. And last but not least, we have Zara Gorbany, postdoctoral researcher at the National Institutes of Standards and Technology and recent Penn State PhD in Architectural Engineering. Moderating today's discussion is Dr. Michael Verderami, Senior Associate Dean in the Fox Graduate School. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to our panelists and moderator. Thank you all for being here and for sharing your time and insights with us. Following the panel, I invite you to stay for a casual networking mixer with our panelists, fellow graduate students, alumni board members, and professionals from across the Penn State community. It's a great opportunity to connect, ask questions, and build relationships that could help shape your next steps. So again, thank you for being here, and let's begin. Dr. Verderami.
Thank you, Dean Esters, and welcome to everyone here, both in the Flex Theater and the Hub, as well as those of you participating online today. We have an outstanding panel here for you today. I hope you've got some questions ready, and I hope as we go through, you come up with some other good questions. I'm sure they're ready to answer them all. Before we start taking, and for those of you online, remember you can submit questions through the question and answer function. Before we start with questions, I'd like to give each of our panelists an opportunity to briefly introduce themselves. And I'll start, Matt, with you, if you would. You're muted, Matt.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, the classic unmute trap. Hey everyone, my name's Matt Chang. I am a software engineer at Google DeepMind, class of 2011 Penn State Electrical Engineering. I guess in the theme of this panel, I've done every single career move I've made, I've done something quite different. I started off my career in consumer electronics at Apple, moved to a small early stage startup doing optical chip design afterwards. And then a couple years ago, I moved into AI and software engineering. I joined a startup called Windsurf, which some of you may be familiar with if you use coding assistants. And now I'm at Google DeepMind. So I guess I think in this panel, I'll try to bring more of the tech perspective. And also, if you have any specific questions about startups, that's kind of an exercise in chaos and uncertainty. I'm happy to provide that perspective as well. I also want to add, sorry I couldn't be there in person today. But really appreciate all of the effort by the organizers in the graduate school to let me be the floating head in the room.
Thanks, Matt. Zara?
Hi everyone, I'm Zara Gorbani. I just graduated last summer, so I'm the freshest alumni here. I did my PhD in architectural engineering, and I was also working for OPP at the same time, Office of Physical Plans, so I had some hands-on experience too. I've started working as a postdoctoral researcher at National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. I can talk a lot about uncertainty because I think I'm living through uncertainty right now, but I can share my experience and how you can navigate through that for your career.
Thank you. Nina.
Hi everyone, I'm Mina Tai Vogel. I graduated Penn State in 2007 with a PhD in mass communication. My background here was in media psychology. I was actively involved in a media effects research lab here, and I actually, following graduation from Penn State, I ended up going towards an academic track. I was a professor at University of Kentucky, and then moved to Boston University, where I was on tenure track, became tenured in the College of Communication, and I ended up having like this epiphany moment during the pandemic, and I ended up deciding to resign from my tenured role and make a jump and take kind of that big leap of faith into the industry. And that's when I kind of took my experiences from research in academia and co-directing a research lab at Boston University and joined Meta. And I've joined Reality Labs, where I had helped lead research and is a team of researchers doing qualitative and quantitative research supporting the Metaverse org. And recently, about 5 months ago, I left Reality Labs and joined a different part of Meta, and now I am working on research, and I'm a UX research manager supporting Facebook trust and safety. So really excited to be here, and thank you all for everyone to put this panel together, and I'm really excited to share my experiences making kind of that jump from academia to the industry, specifically also speaking about experiences in tech and UXR. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jamie?
Hi, everyone. Jamie Rogers. Thanks for having me. It's a real homecoming. I'm from State College originally, so it's great to be back home. I was born on the other end of Park Avenue here. A first-generation college student, as they mentioned. I was a liberal arts major, and my first year out of Penn State, I was a public educator. And then Uncle Sam called, and I worked for Uncle Sam for the last 22 years. I've jumped around to various agencies. I spent about 10 years at EPA doing procurement for voluntary climate protection partnerships. And then I joined an agency called the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID. Worked there for about 6 years doing procurement, helping in humanitarian assistance, and those most marginalized become more self-reliant. I then had a chance to become a senior executive at the Department of Energy, or what I jokingly refer to as the Department of Everything. In procurement, we bought everything from janitorial to supercomputing and everything in between. During that time, I flirted with NASA once, twice. Third time was the charm. So I jumped from the Department of Energy to NASA, where I got to work on procurements for Artemis program and the lunar lander. And I thought that was my apex, my dream job. But remember USAID, my boss retired after 40 years. So for the last 18 months prior to this year, I had what I thought was my dream job as Chief Acquisition Officer. We had 80 countries and 400 buyers and a $30 billion portfolio. But as those of you who are well-informed Penn Staters know, with current events, the agency was imprecisely dismantled and jobs were abolished. So 10 months ago, I didn't think I'd be sitting here, but I joined Amazon, another large global organization, and I'm happy to talk about what I learned in pivoting from government to industry, and just what I learned in moving in general to different agencies and different cultures. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you all. One of the themes of today's event is in times of uncertainty. And we were talking a little bit beforehand. It's always times are a little uncertain. They're maybe a little more uncertain than they are now. But I think just from these brief introductions, I hope you appreciate we have a tremendous wealth of experience and knowledge here among our panelists. And so hit them with your best shot. I'm going to start off just with one question. I know several of our panelists have expressed an interest in tackling this one. Maybe not too hard. Hopefully you'll have better ones. But what are the top 3 skills that you all think graduate students should develop before graduation to be competitive in their fields? And Matt, why don't I let you start?
Yeah, sounds good. I would say the 3 top skills I would list. The first one is agency and independence. The second one, communication skills, and then the third one is just the ability to self-learn. And I'll kind of walk through a little bit of each of them. But the first one, independence, I think this one's pretty straightforward. Everyone's busy today, and whether it's your professor or your manager, no one has time to handhold. And it's the best candidates, the most competitive ones, are the ones who are able to come forward, take initiative, and kind of work through parts of the problem first before they bring it to their manager or their professor or whoever. The second one, communication skills. I think this one has always served me well throughout my career. One of my old instructors used to say, "Science not communicated is science not done." And I think it's a little bit cheesy, but it's actually right on the nose. There's so many brilliant people in the world that you're going to work with, but not all of them can really communicate what their ideas are. And it's really the ones who are able to get their ideas across, put themselves in the shoes of those around them, figure out what drives them and what they know and what they don't, that are really able to be effective in their jobs. And then the third one, the ability to self-learn. There's just so much change going on in industry, no matter where you are. So I think the ability to constantly refresh your skills, constantly learn new skills, use new tools. These are all things that have served me very well throughout my career, and I'm certain would serve anyone else as well.
Great, thank you. Anyone else like to chime in?
Yeah, so +1 to what Matt mentioned about communication. That is definitely one of them that I think is so critical. And also to add on to communication is really being able to be a very strong storyteller, where you can take really complex ideas and being able to simplify them. And I think like sometimes we're in a trap where we learn, we become kind of like specialists in an area, and we're really proud of the expertise and like that depth of knowledge, but being able to be concise and be a strong storyteller, I would emphasize that. The other skills that I would also emphasize is being able to problem solve, identify problems, and being able to come up with solutions proactively is something. I think it goes back to kind of what Matt brought up of just being able to be to initiate and to be proactive. But oftentimes, it's not about just like coming up with a problem and having someone else bring up the solution, but being that the person who solutionizes. The other thing I want to bring up is the skill to be agile and adaptable. I think oftentimes we want something to feel like we're going into a stable situation, and that's comfortable and familiar. But the industry is constantly changing, so we need to be able to develop and hone that skill to always be ready to pivot. And when we pivot, we're embracing change and being able to embrace also ambiguity, where it is going to be unclear what that next path is, but it's that we have that skill in being incredibly agile to deal with different changes that come up that are unexpected.
Yeah, Jamie?
And if I could add, so we did coordinate, but I have an A as well. I have 3 A's. One of them is agility. The other is analysis and making sure that we're data-driven in our decision-making. And the other A that I have is awareness. I'm going to put a little qualifier on there that it's empathetic awareness. Maybe I'll start with that one. In chaotic environments, in global environments, in areas with a lot of change, it's important to reflect not only on yourself and give yourself grace, but understand where other people are coming from. That gets you way far down the road when you're trying to tackle some of these challenges that seem insurmountable, whether it's humanitarian assistance issues, whether it's lunar landers at NASA. Empathy goes a long way. You can have the technical smarts and the chops, but if you don't meet people where they are, so that empathetic awareness, I think, is really important. Exactly what you said, +1, +2 on agility. I think we got 3 votes for that. Just being able to pivot. but being strategic about it. You know, we could be agile and just be running in circles and not really having a plan. Are you making a small change to make a bigger impact, or is it something drastic where you have an epiphany in the middle of the night? And then, of course, being from scientific and technical agencies, having the data-driven analytics behind any decision we make, that things are based and grounded in the truth and science and fact, I think is really important.
Great, thank you. I will take this opportunity to provide a little commercial building on Nina's comment. The Fox Graduate School runs their 3-minute thesis competition every year. It's an opportunity for you to share your work in 3 minutes with one static slide to a general audience. Great way to practice. Look for that. I have not seen any online questions yet. Anyone in the audience have a question? Yes. We have a microphone, so please wait for that.
Should I stand?
If you wish.
Sure. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. So I'm a PhD student from the College of Information Sciences Technology. I'd worked a couple years before, and one thing that I've noticed in recent years, as I'm reflecting on my experience, is that a lot of successes cannot be replicated because there are so many variables involved, right, in one's career, in the changing times. So I suppose my question is, given, again, the theme of uncertainty, right? As either someone who's recently graduated or someone who's gone through career changes and shifted roles, change industries, what are the consistent source of success that you've seen that successful candidates or yourself seems to exhibit, right? That's regardless of, that's consistent across times of success or times of difficulties. And I'm just curious about that because that's one puzzle that I cannot really crack.
Yeah, great question. Zara.
That's a great question. I think building your network and building connections from even earlier years of your graduate school, I think that was one of my strengths, and I've also seen in successful people in the industry and academia, it's important to grow your network and build connections before you need them. I know like people usually just go to career fairs and other events when they are looking for a position or need a job. That's not ideal. Because if you need genuine connections, you can build on that. And one day, if you need to get a job or need help with your career, you can count on that relationship. So I think networking and building your network is definitely maybe number one thing you should consider.
Jamie.
I think in pivoting from different organizations, one thing that I've learned to do, I'm pretty loquacious and I'm an extrovert in case you can't tell, and so it doesn't come naturally to me, but to listen to people and give people the chance, if you're exploring a new organization to join, whether academic or industry, to talk to people and to listen to them, listen about their personal experience, listen about their hopes and dreams and opportunities, and also the pain points. We get a lot of data from pain points when we look at different challenges. So I think that's very important, but also listen to yourself too. You have a natural intuition, you have a great college education, so do some self-examining about who you are, and where you want to be. I think that's really important. In this chaotic world with lots of noise, we often don't take time to listen to ourselves. So I think that's important as you're deciding what your next step is. But also take a next step. At Amazon, we have a principle called a one-way door and a two-way door. A lot of doors in life are two-way doors, but we don't treat them that way. We treat them as a one-way decision. So know that if you go down a path, there's usually a way to correct along the way. So no one decision, granted there are some major life decisions, but no one decision is typically gonna make or break your entire experience. So give yourself grace with that. We also have another leadership principle at Amazon called bias for action. Do something. Go ahead and do it. See what happens. Fail quickly and move on and learn from it. So listen to yourself and don't be afraid to take action.
Mina, did you want to add
Yes,
something?
absolutely. So yes, I'm all for bias for action. We talk about that a lot at Meta. So to also add to it, persistence, I think, is something that is oftentimes really difficult when you feel like everything around you, like people's experiences or just hearing about people not necessarily landing a job or getting a call, and then you're going through it. And it's easy, I think, to fall in that catastrophic thinking trap. And the reason why I bring up persistence is because things are constantly changing in the industry. The economic climate is changing. There are people who there are moments that are ebbs and flows of mass layoffs that happen, and certainly when those things happen, I think you oftentimes feel like you can't control a lot of things, but what you can control is kind of going back to like the networking, the moments where you can actually continually push yourself to expand your network, to learn and listen, like what you just brought up about like listen from people's experiences, learn what's worked for them. But it's not always a cookie cutter approach. Like what would not work for someone or work for someone might not work for you because you all have very different skill sets. But one thing I do want to add is what is constant, I think, that I've always leaned on is that you can always continually scale your knowledge. And that's something where everything could seem like it's crumbling around and things like not working around you, but you have the ability and the agency to continually learn and figure out where you can stay up to date on things. That maybe, yes, there might not be a lot of opportunities right now, but you can make those opportunities by continually to learn, to look for classes or opportunities where through networks, they might make recommendations. And so I do want to just mention that. I think what could be, you can think about it as that constant of persistence and scaling knowledge is something that could always be something that you can be empowered and is within your control.
Matt, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I'll give a little bit more, I guess, tactical feedback, I guess. The first one is I want to double click on the networking thing, as I think everyone has here. I think it's just critical. It's been critical for me. And if you put yourself in the shoes of the recruiter on the other side, they might get 100 resumes that all look very similar, right? Really good profiles. They come from really good schools. They've taken really similar classes. The way you kind of stand out from that bunch is maybe someone who can speak to your skills and back you up internally and give you that leg up, and then get you in person where I think you can really shine and show how you're different beyond what's just on paper. The other thing I would say is maybe a little bit more tactically is you really have to make an effort to stand out. And I'll give you an example of that. When I made my transition from hardware to software, there was no way I was going to compete on paper with other candidates because I didn't have a CS degree. I had never worked in software myself. There was just nothing on paper that would make me look competitive. But what I had were two things in my favor. The first one is I knew someone at the company who could kind of attest to my hard work or the type of person I am. And then the second thing I did was when they did bring up the concern that they had that maybe they might hire me, but then I wouldn't be a good software engineer. I told them, hey, look, I understand the risk that you're taking on if you brought me in. How about we do this? Just take me on as an intern. Pay me like the legal minimum of whatever the state is, in this case, California, and let me be an intern for 3 months. And that way, if I completely fall flat on my face, minimum risk to the company, minimum loss there. But if I work out, this is the best interview you can have. So I'm not saying you should do exactly that, but I think maybe get a little bit creative and you'll stand out in other ways by showing kind of how much you care and how sincere you are about what you're trying to do.
Great, thank you. The next one I'm going to take from our online audience, and it's a great one certainly I faced for many years of my career. How do you face imposter syndrome and move forward in applying for and working in positions that you feel unqualified for despite meeting most of the requirements? Zara.
That's a great question, and I think the research shows that women deal with that way more than men too. So it's important to talk to your peers, because when you talk to them, you realize that you're not the only one dealing with that. And in your network, you can always talk to people, to your mentors, to see if you're a good fit or you're qualified for that. A lot of times you don't feel ready, but you're actually maybe overqualified for the position. And it's kind of doing it anyway. That's my approach.
Thank you.
I think, raise your hand if you've ever had imposter syndrome. Yes, I think almost everyone has. If you didn't raise your hand, you're lying. I have it in every position I took. I'm like, wow, why'd they pick me? They picked you for a reason. It was a cultural fit. You brought the technical know-how, so don't sell yourself short. Now, it's easy to tell other people that. When you look in the mirror, it's hard to say. But one way I've tried to get over it is by finding a mentor outside of the organization where I reside to get their sort of third-party feedback on, hey, is Jamie a good fit here? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing from your vantage point, whether they're a stakeholder or not? So, but at the end of the day, you were picked for a reason. And believe me, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of applicants for the position. So consider yourself lucky that you got there and then prove yourself. I think we all have those feelings. I think it's as natural as can be.
Yeah, and also, I think it's important to remember that when you look at qualifications, like on a job posting, oftentimes it's not that you need to fit those at the moment, is that they're looking for someone who eventually will be in a position where they're going to grow and develop those skills. And that's something that's really important, because I think like oftentimes job postings tend to, they scale the way in which certain requirements are described can be really intimidating. But then you find out that it's not that it's a full 8 years, but someone with 5 years of experience in something comparable, but then, maybe having 2 to 3 years in another area, right? That you could be able to, like, that's why I brought up storytelling, communicating. The value of your skills is really important, because there are certainly so many different ways you can shape and frame the experiences you have to have it be relevant to the types of jobs that come up. And I think that with imposter syndrome, I think not only does it come with when you get that job, but it comes with whether or not it impacts whether or not you even try for a job. And that's where I think I've always, shared this with like even former students of mine, is that there's never going to be something you feel that you're fully ready for. You might say, oh, I'm going to wait to develop this skill, so then maybe I develop I have 1 or 2 more experiences so I can then be ready for this opportunity. But when that happens, that opportunity might never come back again. So I would really, I would probably, recommend that one of the things that I tell, I noticed that has helped me is even when you don't think you're ready, no one would ever really fully be ready. There's never going to be something that defines 100% readiness, but it's about how you communicate the value and demonstrate the impact of your value and your skills. And I think that's something that, and imposter syndrome is definitely a constant, I think, across everyone. And once you start actually realizing that everyone feels that way, you also feel as if it's actually a norm and it's not something that is just about you. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm going to take another one online, and we'll come back to the audience here next. But first of all, thank you so much for sharing your experience and insights. I guess one of the major questions right now has to do with the impact of AI in the professional landscape. What changes have you noticed from your own perspectives? In line with your emphasis on adaptability, what are some of the ways in which we can adapt to these major technology-driven changes? Just an easy one.
Okay, so I would say that when it comes down to new technologies, especially AI, certainly I find it to be important to think about ways to embrace change instead of fight against it. I know that like with any, studying media effects, oftentimes people tend to naturally jump towards like more in the direction of being afraid of the negative consequences and the ways in which changes like AI could have negative impact on society and also replace jobs. I think that's probably one of the areas that I hear a lot of concerns about is, whether or not, when it comes down to our use of AI, could we start seeing reduced, types of roles that people can have, as well as also not necessarily knowing how to properly use it so that it actually helps improve efficiency instead of actually reduce efficiency and quality of work. So I think one thing that what I have noticed, especially working at Meta, and of course, I know that a number of different technology companies have been kind of grappling with like, what's the future of AI, or how do we approach it and maybe look at its development. I think that in any case, anytime something new comes about, it's really how you use it, because you can use like any tool for good, but you can also use the tool where the implications could also have downstream negative effects. But I think that's where I've been more like leaning towards, is thinking about like ways we can actually implement and actually have it be productive, and finding ways where we're more embracing the changes than fighting against it, because I think like that's in some ways kind of the direction in which any new technology medium that gets introduced to society is typically experienced. Yeah.
So I know Matt would like to chime in.
Yeah, I think this is a great question. I'll give you a concrete example of what happened, obviously, in our industry. Windsurf, my last company, was probably one of the first companies to roll out like a real AI coding assistant. And obviously no one knew how to use this thing, when we first rolled it out, but people learned very quickly. And in our specific case, what happened is we learned that rather than it's more worth our time to just act as the manager of the AIs as opposed to actually writing some of the code ourselves. Because the AI can write more code probably better than you and faster than you anytime. So like Mina said, we really leaned into that, and we said, okay, let's use the strengths that the AI has and combine it with the strengths that we have as humans and as engineers, and combine those two together. And I think that's what really boosts the productivity in my particular case. But I think in general, I would echo what Mina said. Really, like, lean into the change. No one knows how to use a lot of these tools, even the people who are building and training them. I'll speak to that from experience. We're all kind of learning how this works from the ground up. And that's a great equalizer, actually, if you think about it, because that means everyone's kind of starting in the same spot. We're all learning how to use this thing together. And I think it's just a really good opportunity to experiment with things, find things that work for you, find things that don't work for you, and just keep iterating, because these models and the AI models that are coming out, they're constantly going to change, and they'll get better. And so you'll also have to adapt your own working style around it.
And if I could add, I'm a non-techie, and I'm very excited about AI. In procurement and strategic sourcing, we're powered by people that are building relationships with our suppliers. So no one's ever going to take that human approach away. But in our shop, we've actually had some of our technical folks come in, and on a weekly basis, we have these little mini trainings to build people's AI literacy and to start tinkering with some of the many, many tools and iterations of things that the folks are developing. And from my standpoint, from an operational standpoint, it frees up a lot of time that I would spend analyzing and doing pivot tables and other crazy things that I can do higher value work, like mend a relationship with a supplier that's not delivering, or spend time doing things that AI can't. So I'm really excited. I think it will make us more efficient. There's always too much work in sourcing and negotiating. So I think, if that's your sector, there's always going to be a human element there. You can't replace it entirely with AI, but as others have said, embrace it. It's another tool in the toolbox, and it'll help us be more efficient.
Great, thank you all. I can tell you that the Graduate Council is very interested in making sure that our students are well prepared in this field, and they've been working hard on that, and will continue to do so. Another question from the audience here in person.
Hi, I'd like to ask the panelists, can you think back to your graduate school experience and share any programs or resources that you tapped into while you were here that were really, really helpful to you in preparing for your next steps?
Sarah?
Yeah, so I think there are some good programs and opportunities. There was a program called Accelerate to Industry, which graduate school organized. So it was geared towards graduate students who want to go into the industries or generally like non-academic jobs. So you would hear about all these like different types of jobs and how to tailor your resume and do interviews, and it was really beneficial. So I think like be on the lookout for that, and also again like build your network. So try to go to different conferences and events to build your network and find like-minded people and people who are who can be your role models or mentors. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not,
Oh yeah. So we actually. So I know that I leaned a lot on my lab groups that I was involved with to get mentorship, and also leaned on also a +1 to like conferences where you can really be able to meet folks who are doing like areas that similar on topics that are similar to yours, and also learn from those who are more senior. I know that when I first started as like a first year and a second year, I was leaning a lot on like fourth year and fifth years to learn about, you know, what are things that they wish they would have done differently. And oftentimes they would say, you want to make sure you are working you know, just as much involved in like whether it's the graduate council in your college or even going to a conference and looking at like, you know, different looking at the alumni programs there. And oftentimes I've realized like even from like class project groups, you know, I leaned a lot on like those kind of opportunities where there are folks who were involved in others sort of like student organizations, and I naturally was just like, oh, that's really interesting. And I tried also not to just stay within my own discipline. That's also another area that I think is another advice that I would give, is that oftentimes we might just stay within our college or our department, but there are some of my very dear friends who from other departments like architecture, other places where I've noticed that they have also programs and events where I can actually also learn from. So I do want to also encourage that we also spread outside of our own disciplines as well.
thank you. And another commercial. Watch this space. The Graduate School Alumni Society and the Fox Graduate School's Office of Graduate Educational Engagement are both working to build programs, more programming like this for you all. So keep an eye out. Other questions, either online or here in the audience?
So I wrote down two, but I'm going to ask one now and save another one for later. So how do you, what advice do you have for students in the room in terms of how do they navigate the advisor-advisee relationship if their career goals don't align with that of their advisor? So for example, the advisor may have aspirations for them to pursue a career in academia, however, the student may want to pursue something in business industry. So could you speak to that?
I guess that's a challenging one. I was fortunate enough not to have an advisor like that. Like my advisor didn't impose his ideas on me, and he was open to both academic and industry positions. But I think the relationship you have with your advisor is very delicate because you need to continue working with him. But I guess you don't need to directly like challenge that or like maybe it's better not to express that you're essentially like going the other way if the advisor has that much of a strong opinion. But it is really challenging to do that.
Thanks. Matt?
Yeah, that's a tough situation just because of the dynamic in graduate school. I don't know where you are, kind of in your program, but I mean, I think there's also a couple of other options you might consider is if this is really becoming an antagonistic relationship, you can transfer advisors, right? That you shouldn't just pigeonhole yourself into this if it's a really negative situation. But I think what Zara said was also right. You don't have to go head to head on this particular item if you can avoid it. At the end of the day, it is your choice, and I think you should always just remember that and just try to get through as much as you can, and then ultimately it's your choice once you graduate.
Thank you. Mina?
And I also want to add, I mean, again, I'm very fortunate that I have an advisor who never, pressured me into like a specific role. It was about like what would make you happy ultimately, and really focusing on what inspires me intrinsically. But I would say this, that one recommendation I would give is not necessarily focusing on the outcome of graduation on a specific role, but really about like the skills that you've developed through the training in the program you're in and through the mentorship opportunities you've had with your advisor, how that can be leveraged to help drive an area that you're passionate about. Because it ultimately shouldn't be about the role of whether you stay in an academic track or go in the industry, because I feel like that kind of focuses too much on that there's only one, that they're separate identities, but it could be that you actually find ways to communicate that, where it's a merge of both, where you're applying the expertise and the training that you've gotten through the coaching, the mentorship from your advisor. And I think that helps that delicate balance of like focusing on the skills and the experience to lead you towards an area that you're very passionate about, instead of saying that here's a role that's different from what you want me to do. So just kind of want to give like maybe a little bit of reframing of finding ways to kind of marry or integrate both perspectives together.
Thank you. And I would just add, we've heard a lot about networking today, and having that extensive network, a professional network, and even mentors other than your advisor are also supportive in that kind of situation. So we'll keep with that theme, and we'll reflect back on some of the things we heard from you all when you introduced yourselves. So many students share that they feel uncertain about whether to stay into academia or move into industry. So a step before the problem, they don't know what to do. Can you talk about how you made that decision in your own career? What factors guided you, how you approached it? Was it an all-in shift or something that happened gradually over time? What smaller steps might have helped you move from one path to the other? You've all had a lot of transitions. Somebody must have something.
Okay, I'm happy to start. So for me, my transition, I would say, was now in hindsight, it might have seemed abrupt when I decided to leave academia, because it was during the pandemic and I was really thinking about whether or not there were other avenues that I could see myself getting more energy from. Because as I was tenured and thinking about going up for full professor down the road, where I really saw that, where I had that epiphany and that change for myself during the pandemic, was thinking about, do I get more energy from just contributing to, the scientific community and enhancing knowledge about a certain topic area? Or do I get my energy from demonstrating impact and actually informing real world decisions and also identifying problems in large spaces and actually making an impact on how things change, not only on an organizational level, but like business strategies and policies. And that was something where I was really passionate about real world impact. And that's, I think, the moment where in 2021, I started thinking, well, I reached out, also spoke with a number of my former students who went into UXR, and also, I have, some dissertation committee members where I reached out, and they've had experience with other former students as well, and connected me to also a specific group on Facebook that had someone who was a UXR from Lego who started this group called like PhD to UXR. And it was really through the networking within that group that spurred the conversation and my thinking that I was actually really interested in that real world application direct impact. And that was something I've not really experienced in academia because it was a lot focused on publishing. And so based on my experience, I would say certainly you want to think about where you get that energy from, where you're most passionate about, because if it's focusing on like that real world practical impact component and really focusing on like how do we deliver outcomes based on your technical skills and the research that you're working on, then I would say that can probably be an indicator that you want to potentially consider an industry position and making that leap. And that was kind of my story on how I did it.
Thank you. So I was an academic for 1 year. I was an educator, and for me, it was also the scale and where can I have the most impact, and where did I get my most personal satisfaction from, and where will I be able to grow? So I'm a big fan of having your cake and eating it too. I think that you can work in industry and dabble in academia as well. So during my not so much free time, I still teach. I teach citizenship class for folks that are naturalized citizens, and every 2 weeks that kind of keeps me connected, and I have that personal impact of changing someone's life personally, while I still have the professional satisfaction of driving huge changes and big global programs and purchases. So I think you need to do what's right for you. Back to that listening to yourself and kind of having a self-awareness that you shouldn't necessarily need to pick one or the other. You can find roles, whether in academia, maybe you find a role where you have more of that global impact, or vice versa. In industry, you have opportunities to teach and mentor and coach and those sorts of things. You only have one professional life, so you need to decide what the right mix is to make yourself happy.
Let's go to Matt, and then Zara, you can chime in a minute. Matt.
Yeah, I had a very abrupt realization. It was in my third year of grad school. I know exactly when it happened. And my professor actually had the students write research grants and proposals. And that process just broke me. I realized very quickly I was not cut out for academia, just because of the way that it worked. But also kind of echoing what the other two have said, what I learned about myself is I'm really driven by building product and building something that will help people, that people will use, and just make things better. And what I realized was that I think for me, I felt like academia was too long-term, or maybe too one step removed from the hands-on product to kind of retain my interest in the process. So that's how I realized it. But what I did afterwards was I really tried to focus on projects in the lab that had more direct connections to industry, or were more strongly driven by application rather than, for example, theory. And through this process, I got to meet people in industry. I got to meet people who were working on applications. I got exposure to how you actually build product and what are some of the considerations there. And so I was able to benefit from it, even though I knew I wasn't going to go into academia after I graduated.
Thanks, Matt. Zara.
Yeah, building on that, I think it is important to know yourself and to know what drives you. And also educate yourself on different types of jobs, even in academia. It's different when you go to an R1 or research-heavy institution versus a teaching university. So Matt was talking about grant writing. So if you're in an R1 university like Penn State, you need to write and get a lot of grants. But if it's a teaching institution, or if it's a liberal arts college, you will do research, but you'll be mostly doing teaching. So it's important to know what you enjoy the most. So do you like teaching? Do you like research? And even if you do like research, academia is not the only way to go. It's important to know that there are also positions in national labs and other organizations that you can do research. So for me, I was also passionate about doing practical and impactful research, and that's why I joined NIST, to be able to do research, but it's not just theoretical. It's I can see the impact directly.
Thank you all. I think the theme there starts pretty clearly with know yourself, right? And what you're passionate about, what excites you. Let's take one from online. Someone would like to talk about persistence and transitions. When faced with factors I cannot control, should I give up my persistence and transition to something else? What values guide you in making the decision between persistence and transition?
I have some feelings. They don't say persistence pays off for nothing. Case in point, NASA. I tried once, I didn't make it. Didn't even ask for feedback because I, again, had imposter syndrome. 2 years later, I saw a deputy job for the position. I'm like, well, I wasn't good enough for the top spot. I'll go for the runner-up. Didn't get it. But I started to get some gumption. I said, you know what? I want to know why I didn't get it. So I asked for a debriefing. And NASA gave me a debriefing. They hired the guy that had 25 years of experience and had worked at several centers and had an aeronautics degree. Sounds like a good decision. I agree with that decision. But in that debriefing, they said, well, try again. We liked you, but, maybe another 2 years. A week later, they called me back and said, hey, since we made that internal hire, we have an open position and we think that you will fit. I'm like, well, what is it? Can you send me? And how soon are we talking? And within 2 months, I switched from Department of Energy to NASA. And boy, did I have imposter syndrome there. But persistence pays off. Ask for feedback. So I had a failure. I had 2 failures. You get a lot of feedback and data from those failures. So don't count yourself down. It's how many times you get back up, right? So persistence does pay off, and leveraging those networks too. So my boss at the time started out as a NASA intern in 1989, and when I called him up to say, hey, guess what? He said a word that I probably shouldn't say in public, and then he said, go for it. Go for it. Take a chance. You'll learn great things, and I did. So be persistent. It really does pay off, even though if it's a pain in the butt. To do it. Just that third or fourth or fifth time might be the magic one.
I love that. And plus one to that, but I also want to just add that I think it's really important to be persistent in the sense of, like, the more that you put yourself out there, you are increasing visibility, which is I think, like, oftentimes we underestimate that people really do remember if they see your name over and over and over again. Eventually, it's like activating the schema, right? Of like that they even if it's in a pile of resumes, that they see you coming back, your name. But I do want to also emphasize that it's important that you take in feedback where you adapt, so that you're not always trying the same way each time, which oftentimes we might just say, oh, well, they didn't take me this time, I'm going to send in the same resume over and over and over again. And there is a reason why it didn't probably pass that first round, right? So it is really important that you are persistent, but it doesn't mean that they're completely mutually exclusive. Like, you could be persistent, but can be adaptable in the way you're persistent. And I think that's really important. And I have like rarely met people in, my current job role right now where when you ask how many times did you, interview or go through the loop and didn't get through, and oftentimes that number is very high. And so that comes to show you that, definitely persistence and also adapting to feedback is critical, and definitely something, just wanted to plus one to that.
Thank you. Other questions from our students here?
First, thank you so much for coming. My question has to do with our amazing alumni network. Of course, I'm incredibly biased on that. Can you please discuss a time throughout your various different transitions that you've reached out to the Penn State network, maybe how you did that, or how a Penn Stater reached out to you? Because I know that sometimes people think we're very intimidating, but I know I love when current students reach out to me. So maybe if you could share those experiences.
Someone want to chime in? Sarah?
Yeah, I think just speaking from experience, if your lab has been there for several years, I think that's a good starting point, like reaching out to the alumni from your lab. That's what I did, because they also have a lot of similar interests. I graduated very recently, but I keep the door open for the people that I was in touch with here, the undergrads, because I think it's important to let them know that you're there to support if they need it, to make it less intimidating.
Thank you. Jamie?
Just want to underscore the value of the network. Penn State has one of the largest alumni associations in the world. I don't know, is it 800,000 or something? Something in the hundreds of thousands. I actually got my first job 2 weeks from graduation at Penn State because my interviewer was a Penn Stater and met her husband at Penn State, and they had their wedding in Boalsburg, where I'm from. So as soon as I walked in the door, I practically had the job. Later on, that Penn State network helped me get my job at the Department of Energy, because the senior procurement executive's grandfather was affiliated with the sports programs at Penn State. So he, while not a Penn Stater, had a place in his heart for Penn State. So we struck up a conversation, and that led to more conversations. So there are Penn Staters all over the world in every corner. I've been in Zimbabwe when I worked for USAID, walking across a bridge at Victoria Falls, and there was a man with a Penn State jersey, and I just had to ask, what is your affiliation with Penn State? His cousin was a student here at the time. So we are everywhere. That is an amazing part of being a Penn Stater. So work the heck out of that connection. I think it's really important.
And I'll also add that it's extraordinary, the alumni network, where when it comes down to it, I've been connected through the lab group, and even like my former dissertation committee member, like he'll always be like, Mina, can I connect you with this person who is just about to graduate? And the next thing you know, it's not just one person, it's also that person and also a peer or someone in the classroom. And then you realize that even when you join a job, like you start a new role at a company, he connected me to someone who was a former student there, and she actually was someone who helped mentor me and onboarded me to the company. So it's fascinating, because it's not just about landing a job, it's that you actually continually have mentorship from alumni in the network. So I find it to be like an amazing way to leverage the alumni network through so many different means.
Great, thank you all. I'm going to take one from online. It's a very specific question, but I'll broaden it for you. I hold a master's degree in economics from Ivory Coast. Since moving to the US, I've been working as a warehouse associate and decided to return to school to pursue my MBA with a concentration in data analytics. Because my current role is not directly related to the business field, I've noticed that many job postings require several years of relevant experience. How can I best address or overcome this challenge as I prepare to enter the job market? So Matt gave us a great example earlier about offering to serve as an intern, and wonder if any of you might have some suggestions for how do you position yourself when you're you're being educated in an area, but you don't have a lot of experience yet?
I think a lot of the skills that you learn in graduate school are transferable. So when you read a job description, although you may not have those exact skills, you might have gained some skills that are transferable. So it's important to be adaptable and kind of like know how to rephrase the things that you have done, and you can show off those.
Jamie?
I think it's about how you frame it, and then is there any way to supplement that experience? Is there something you do outside of work? If you're in a volunteer organization and maybe you manage the budget or the books or those sorts of things, can you draw on that experience to fill in those gaps? And be honest about where the gaps are. Don't over deliver or overstate your credentials, but there are ways that you can supplement your experience to kind of fill some of that in.
Great, thank you. Another question from the audience here.
Hi. I'm just curious how you feel the interview process has changed for new graduates compared to, say, when I know you recently graduated, but several of you have now transferred jobs and had lots of change. How have you seen it change, and what advice do you have for some of the new graduates on how best to get that job that they're looking for?
I would say that I've noticed oftentimes that when it comes down to students who interview, they focus a lot on like the technical skills and the experience they have instead of leaning in on demonstrating the value and the impact of those skills. It's like instead of just telling, you want to show why your experiences and your skills are important. I think the reason why it can be really intimidating to make that jump, and more so, I think, employers are looking at, show me the impact of the experiences you've had, not just like the skills and the expertise you've developed in the classroom, but it's about how you have applied it, and to be very clear and crisp, like going back to like storytelling on how your experiences and skills actually make a difference to real world situations and problems. Now, I know that's really intimidating because one could say, well, I've not had those experiences yet. So how can I speak to like changing, decision making in an organization or policies? But I think you can be very creative and intentional on how you do it, because you could take, let's say, a project that you've worked out on in class, right? And it could have implications for something larger in society, that if you had that opportunity, this particular experience or skill could actually shape blank, right? Like being very clear on how you are able to tell the narrative of your specific experiences in a way that demonstrates outcome and impact, I think is something that oftentimes is missing. And I think I would certainly encourage, anyone that is, if they're going into the job market, that is like probably one of the things that's going to make you stand out more, especially in a climate where everyone might have very similar experiences and skills, but what makes you stand out is how you demonstrate the value of those and the impact that it makes.
Matt, I think you want to chime in here?
Yeah, I think whenever I've interviewed new grads, the thing I look for is not whether they can necessarily answer the question or have the experiences that experienced hires would have. It's rather, I want to see if they have good clarity of thought and a good thought process and problem solving. Because that is like the raw skill that you will learn in school that transfers across any job that you have. And I think that goes hand in hand with communication. I think whenever you're interviewing, if you can walk the interviewer through your thought process, even if you don't know the answer, just show how you're thinking about it, how you're breaking down the problem. To me, as an interviewer, that actually goes farther and is a better show of skill than just knowing the answer outright because you've done it before.
Thanks. We're good. I think we have time for one more question. Let's have someone do.
Okay. So I'm very motivated by everyone's speech today. So I really want to understand, what do you think your personal brand is when building trust with others?
Jamie?
That I'm an empathetic person, and that I recognize that good ideas come from all people at all levels, whether you're the brand new intern or a senior executive. So I think my approachability is part of my personal brand, my willingness to listen and take in perspectives from all sides. I think that kind of dovetails with the earlier question about when you're interviewing folks, you're looking more for personality traits and behavioral than whether someone has this, that, or the other. A lot of things that are jobs, at least in industry, you can be taught what you need to do. We're really looking for a type of person that's a problem solver, that can communicate, that can relate to other people, versus whether you have the latest certification. It certainly helps to have the latest certification and encourage you to do that, but you're really looking for fit and personality. So if someone was writing my obituary, I hope that they would say that I'm an empathetic and empowering leader. I think are my two pieces of my brand.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I was going to say something very similar. I think also the part that, so yes, like I think that being able to listen and to be also vulnerable. I want to just bring that up because I think there's a really important piece of being like the human element, that when you are looking for opportunities, it's this idea of having a growth mindset, because none of us have 100% of what anybody is looking for, nor do I think do employers look for that. They want to look for someone who is ready, like who wants to learn, who wants to be challenged. And ultimately, I think I think I've been very clear that there are times where if you are intimidated by something, it's actually okay to share that, because it shows that you actually are looking for something that is challenging, because you wouldn't be in that conversation if you weren't intimidated, right? By a role that you might think could be too high of a bar, but you're still there. You're spending the time to talk to an employer and putting yourself out there. So I think one thing that I would hope could also be seen as a superpower, as much as it is something that's tied to imposter syndrome, is also being vulnerable and being real about what you might lack, and also what you want to continually grow and have that growth mindset. I think is really important, and I think that's very appealing for people, because they would know that you're going to be working diligently in trying to improve in that area as well.
Thank you all. So our time here is just about up, but I do have one question to wrap up that I'd like to have each of you address. So if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self back when you were navigating uncertainty in your career, what would it be? Who would like to go first? Sarah?
Building your network from like as early as you can, so you can trust that relationship and be able to count on it, and also marketing yourself or putting yourself out there, telling people about the research you're doing, so they know that you're good at what you're doing.
Thanks. Who wants to go next? Matt, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I'll go next. I think mine would be work with good people who are smarter than you. And there's two parts to that. The first one is good people. And what I mean by that is people who respect each other and people who enjoy working together. Because people extend beyond the job. Your current job will end, but the people you met there, your teammates, they'll go on to do other things, and your network will grow as a result of that. And then the second part is, smarter than you. I think it's just far easier to learn from someone than it is to learn by yourself by exploring in the dark. And it's just always better to benefit from the mistakes that other people have made so that you can go and make new mistakes.
Thank you. Jamie.
I would tell my younger self to take chances, or you can call them calculated risks, and make mistakes. It's how you grow. And just as a similar vein, don't burn bridges. Actually, I think it's better to give you affirmative statements. So do maintain bridges. Actually, you need to reinforce them and upgrade them from time to time. You never know who you're going to come across again, and it's really important to reach back. I still talk to my first boss from when I graduated. So, you just reach back. You are a success because of those around you. So surround yourself with good people and don't forget them.
Mina, last word is yours.
And I would tell my younger self that don't let external factors kind of override the intrinsic passions and motivations you have for the things you want to go after, because I think sometimes we get bogged down into oh, we need to do this because someone else thinks it's better for me. I have expectations for my parents or for my advisor or anybody who, based on how people would judge you if you were to go after an opportunity. The people that I've seen who've been so successful are ones who just follow what they actually find to be most inspirational for themselves and what gives them the most energy, because ultimately at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to be most in the trenches with whatever job that you have, and everything else in terms of what other people's expectations are of you, what people think would be in your best interest. I think that should always not even come into place in consideration. So that would be what I would tell my younger self.
Well, thank you all. There's no doubt, and certainly with apologies to our online folks who submitted questions we couldn't get to, that we could have done this for another couple of hours. But in the interest of the many iterations of we should network, that's going to be the next thing. But before we get to that, I know Dr. Dean Esters has a few comments, but I want to personally thank each of the four of you for your contributions here today and your wisdom. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bertarami. So, a couple of things. One, I want to thank the panelists, Matt, Mina, Jamie, and Zara. You did a phenomenal job. I mean, I really appreciate your time and effort spending time with us today. I also want to acknowledge and thank Dr. Bertarami, our moderator. And I'm going to put him on the spot. I don't know how many of you all know this, but Dr. Bertarami is on a phased retirement. And he's been at this 36 years. Is that correct? 36 years. And I always share the story that when Dr. Bertarami shared with me that he had made that decision to go on phased retirement, I said, say less, because he more than deserves to do that. His family deserves it, his wife and his kids, and so he's earned that right to do that. And I'm glad that I've been now starting my third year in this role, and having Dr. Bertarami, serve as my senior associate dean has been a pleasure to work with him. I've learned a lot from him, and he's not going anywhere yet. He'll be until next August, but nonetheless, I was glad that I had a chance to work with him. So I want to thank him as moderator, and I also want to thank you all for being here. I know you all you can find yourself someplace else this afternoon, but you chose to be here with us. My one goal for you, Lulu and Lisa, is we want this room full next year. I mean, this was a great session. It really was. A lot of what you shared were gems and things that I tell my own graduate students over the years. And so I really appreciate that. And so that's a goal that I have, an aspiration I have, if you will, for us to fill this room next year, or maybe for that matter, move to another room, right, where we have more space. But yeah, so I just want to say thank you for being here. It was great having this session. And the last thing I want to do is I want to pass this microphone around. Everyone, we have members of the Graduate School Alumni Society Board in the room, and I would like for them to introduce themselves, name, and anything else you want to say about yourself, because I want to make sure I acknowledge them as well. So we'll start off, and I'll pass this around.
Hello, and thank you. It was an excellent panel. I am very pleased to be a new member of the Graduate School Alumni Society Board. My name is Deborah Marin, and I have 2 degrees, my bachelor's and master's from Penn State, my doctor's from the University of Massachusetts. And I was here as a student and then came back to work for Penn State for about 17 years, and I came to establish the Alumni Career Services Office working for the Alumni Association. So I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud that that's continuing to be a strong program. But this kind of a program is near and dear to my heart. So I applaud you all for participating, and thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Kathy Hume, 8 years with the Graduate School Alumni Society Board, did my master's work with Penn State, and found it invaluable in my career. I had a concentration in management and healthcare organizations, and what I learned in my master's program served me so well in terms of what I was able to accomplish and how high I was able to go in my career. So you guys are all on the right path in terms of using Penn State for your graduate work.
Hi everyone, I'm Bimal Balakrishnan. I currently serve as Interim Dean and Associate Dean for Research in Architecture, Art and Design at Mississippi State. 2004 graduate of the Master's Program in Architecture, and 2008 PhD in Mass Communication. So I did switch my areas and then went back to teach in architecture, and been on the board now for 6 years. And I can talk to you more about other things when we network. So.
Hi, I'm Sharon Melzer. I have degrees in history, criminology, and administration of public administration. My master's is from Penn State. My PhD is from American. I am one of those that had the tenure track position and walked away from it to have a career in government. But I also like my cake and eat it too. So I also teach at GW. I teach grad school at GW. I teach transnational organized crime. Oh, and I work for the U.S. government.
Bravo. Thank you, Sharon. I'd also like to thank the panel. You came into a subject area that matters a great deal to me. My name is Ken Graham. I have graduated from Penn State 3 times, 2 of them graduate degrees, I'm happy to say. I've been on the faculty at Penn State in business. I've also been in industry. My last large corporation was Royal Dutch Shell in Europe. And more than anything else, I have retired twice and failed both times. So I now call myself a consultant. And the area in which I like to work is strategy, leadership, how organizations change. And on LinkedIn, I have added the phrase Penn State Career Advisor. I just love it to be in this space. Thank you.
Matt, use your inside, outside voice.
Hi everyone, I'm Matt Crott. I got my PhD here in 2018. Before that, I did my bachelor's and master's in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. So right now I work for a small research and development company called Aurora Flight Sciences. It's a subsidiary of the Boeing company. And talk about the value of networking. I knew Matt a long time ago, 15 years, we went to undergrad together. And I don't think I've seen him since he graduated. And yet here we are, we're still able to connect again. And I called on him because I thought he'd be a great speaker. And I'm glad he was able to call in and share his wisdom. And I'm also glad that you all came out here because I know you all have lots of things going on. So I hope you all found this panel valuable.
Thank you. So I wanted to make sure that I took time out to do that. That was important to me. They are phenomenal board members, and I'm glad to be able to work with them. But now, everyone, you mentioned earlier, it was referenced, we have over 800,000 alumni. Here's 6 in the room, and some others in here as well. But thank you again for being here this afternoon. We are going to finish up here. We're going to be out. Is right out here, Lulu? Is that right? The reception. Second floor. Okay, yeah. So we're going to one floor to 233B, I believe is what she said, for hors d'oeuvres and some drinks and things like of that nature. So mix and mingle, have fun. Again, let's give everyone a round of applause. Thank you again for being here.